Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and I'm really excited to be here. I have two guests that are awesome, and I just wanted to introduce him to you. This is Samir and Mike, and we're going to have a really nice chat today. We're going to talk about how to hire a software engineer, or like why to do it, and some case use cases and what advantages, well, pros and cons that we might have. And well, if you have any questions during any topic, feel free to comment in the chat, and we'll be happy to point you in the right direction. If you have any specific use cases, that's why we're here. All right. Well, who is Samir? Welcome, Samir.
Hey, thanks for having me, Armando. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself? Like, what do you do? And yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I am a data architect at AWS, which for anyone that doesn't know, that's Amazon Web Services. Powers a good amount of the internet. So Amazon is, everyone knows, they're doing big things and huge companies. So being an engineer here at Amazon's been a great experience, and learned a lot. So started off as a software engineer, and now I'm a data architect.
Awesome. What about you, Mike? Like, what do you do now? Like, or what were you doing a few months ago?
It's fine. Thanks for the introduction. I'm glad to be here. Mike Mafnas from out of Austin, Texas. Worked from startups to corporate in mostly e-commerce, but have big data capability also. Former director of engineering at Adobe. Bought or sold a company to them 3 years ago. You know, made a good amount of profit there, and now focusing my attention on real estate investing and other businesses. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for being here, and I'm very excited for what's about to happen. Well, let's just begin. Like, let's just begin with the key question. Like, why? Why should we hire at some point a software developer? And when will we say we're ready to hire someone?
Yeah, I think that's a good question actually, and I think everyone should ask themselves that, right? Like, what stage they're at, and what's the real reason they want to hire somebody to help them out, right? So, for anyone that hasn't read Rocket Fuel, right, I think that's a great starting point to understand the difference between a visionary or an integrator, right? And so, yeah, I think software engineers tend to fall under the category of integrator, who actually like put systems together or kind of figure out those kind of things on the back end, if you will. So it's understanding where you fit in, right? So are you more integrator and already enjoy doing those kind of things, or are you more visionary and want to focus on big picture, maybe with the direction of the business, right? So it's, I think, first of all understanding that, and then second of all understanding what you're trying to do. Every business is going to be different. Everyone's going to have a different need and different problems that they are looking to solve. So getting clear with yourselves on like, what is the goal, right? What are your goals, and what direction you're headed in, and how a software engineer might be able to even fit into that picture, right? How they might, their services, or how they might be able to help solve your problems. So I think that's a great starting point I would personally think about, right? And Mike, if you have anything to add on to that, or your thoughts are.
Oh yeah, for sure. Right out of the gate when we talk about software engineers and integrators, I mean they're synonymous, but they're different touch points, like at different levels, right? Software engineer, can offer you different points of value in your business, right? We look at the tools out there, and there's an array of them, right? And there's confusing marketing that goes on. There's different choices that need to be made that in terms of daily business, some people who are more on the um, not the integrator mindset, but the visionary mindset, right, struggle with. And so software engineers, generally speaking, are more adept in helping you set that vision, that you talked about, Samir, that can help with the daily tasks, and getting everything in a more efficient, um, you know, paint a picture of more of the strategic vision of where you want to set up tools and stuff like that.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, definitely. I agree with all of that. I mean, it's really important to mention that if you were to hire a software engineer, like, probably they don't have any real estate like context or lingo. So it's really important to be like crystal clear with what you have, or what you have, and then what you need. and then like how to connect the dots and everything so they can properly build what you actually need. If not, they will make some assumptions and just build what they think will be the right path. But I mean, you are the like the field expert, right? You know like the real estate business, and you know like what is worth automating, or what makes sense to connect and what doesn't make sense. So it's your job to tell them and just to give them context and just be training them or explaining them or educating them to so you can have the best results, right?
Yeah, and I think for anybody that isn't familiar with software or hasn't worked with software, they might not know like what is it that they need and is it even possible, right? So a lot of things that as a software engineer, right, like there's a lot of use cases or a lot of things where they were asked to do and we're like, hey, that's not like to do that. Yes, you can do it, but it's just going to be a huge undertaking and it might not be worth doing, right? So it's like understanding the business need, right? Which a lot of software engineers hate thinking about business needs. They just want to do their work. And so, being clear on like, is this a business need? How much of a business need is it? And then what is the ROI, right? Like if I'm going to be hiring a software engineer to do this, what is my return going to be? And is it worth that, right? And so that kind of goes into like cost and analysis in that way. But just understanding clearly, like you said, right, and being clear on expectations, right? Asking them, hey, is this even possible for you to do? What is the timeline, right? Because it might be possible, but it might not be in your timeline that you want, right? So it's very different to kind of be clear on that, and I think that's helps more than anything.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
Go ahead, Mike.
I agree, with you, Samir. Like I would sum it up as software engineers will give visionaries the options available, right? I mean, they'll paint the picture of strategy, the tactical implementation, cost, time, and everything else, right? And then you can make a business decision of which direction you want to take your company.
Yeah, love it. If you were to hire someone, like what tips do you have to estimate the complexity of something? Like let's say I want to build a drip campaign or whatever, like how as a visionary can know how complex will this be? Like do you have any quick tips to estimate something?
Well, I think first of all, like you can make something as complex as you want it to be, and if you ask an engineer, we tend to make things more complex than they need, right? So
100%.
I always think like simple is better, right? Keep it simple, right? So whatever you need, like communicate that first, but then don't let it get complex as it needs to be, right? Like you can have these huge moving pieces and make it, spend forever doing it, right? But there's also just like we call something in software engineering an MVP, right? A minimal viable product, right? And we want to get to MVP as quickly as possible. Can we get something to work and it looks okay, what we expect, right? It's not going to be the best solution, but it will work, right? And so like getting to that point, I think is important, and understanding like you can enhance and optimize later, right? And so because if you try to perfect everything, you'll never get to your solution. So that, and then I think of it a lot of ways, like software might be confusing to you, but like think about it like if you were to estimate a rehab budget, right, or rehab cost, you might not know a thing about construction, right? But how do you normally do that? You usually get a few bids from contractors. Maybe you understand, like this contractor's charging more, but is able to do it faster, or has a better quality of work, whereas some other contractor might be just out of his truck, but there's no guarantee on the work, there's no quality, there's no quality checks in place. So it's like it's similar to that, right? It's like you might not know, but then kind of getting a few bids, feeling it out, feeling what makes sense cost wise and timeline wise,
right?
It's one software engineer might give you the greatest product, but you might charge a lot more for a premium, right? Whereas somebody else might not, and they might just do what's necessary and that's it. Right.
Love it.
So understanding what you need.
Love it. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you want to add anything to that, Mike?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, I think it's a matter of optionality, right? When you're hiring a software engineer, right? And I agree with the MVP approach. I know a lot of people probably that are watching this don't understand. It's the iterative process to get to where you want to be, right? So getting something out there to generate revenue, or getting to your first target so that you can prove that the theory that you're thinking about is working, right? Here's an example in real estate. If someone gave you $500 to market, right? I wouldn't go out and pull a 10,000 lead list and spam them with the hopes of getting a 1% response on an SMS campaign, right? I would go down to the county and go look for records that were active, so that the chance of the hit rate, first off, it's free, right, with the exception of time. But secondly, my hit rate chances will improve because the records are more active and more updated, right? So that's an example of optionality. So in terms of a software engineer, right, I would make sure that minimum viable product, like Samir was saying, right, is the first option where you get to see your theory before you dump tons of money in it, right? Same as the rehab example, right? There are many strategies. You can do a full rehab for 100,000, or you could go in and spend $50,000 on a rehab and get someone to rent until appreciation happens, and then you have the revenue to go ahead and reinvest, right, in real estate terms. So
yeah, love it.
Yeah, and
Well,
then I mean, in terms of like hiring, sorry, I did to
oh yeah, you go
cut you
for
off there. I was gonna say, you know, also seeing it's like hiring somebody else, right? So you want to see what have they done in the past, right? Is this their first gig? Is, you know, like, can you show me some products you've done? Can you show me some testimonials? You know, things like that. Like if in terms of just the hiring side, right? Of like how to hire somebody. And then also, at least, you know, I like to see some critical thinking, right? Like, yes, it's great that they can code, but like, are we gonna be able to have an interaction, right? Like, am I gonna be, because for me, you know, hiring a software engineer is gonna be also like a consultant, especially if I don't know anything about software or, you know, engineering. Like if I'm a pure visionary and I need somebody to maybe walk me through the process, or, you know, handhold a little bit and tell me, hey, this is what I'm thinking, or like give me some feedback, right? So like, how much can they interact with me and actually just like see my vision almost, and then provide their feedback and inputs, right? I think that's a huge thing for me. Can they critically think when I am not there, right?
Yeah.
Or are they going to be pinging me 24/7, being like, hey, do you want this blue or
Right.
do you want this blue? Like, no, I don't care. I just want the solution, right?
Right.
Yeah,
I want the options. Yep.
Right.
love it. Yeah.
Exactly.
And also, it's also important to consider how clean do they work, you know? Like there are people that, like, also in construction, right? Like people who do like really nice things and really neat and really, they pay attention to detail. And there are people who doesn't. Like it's really similar to software developers. There are people who comment and do everything like just really easy to maintain, so you can go back and just modify things. And there are also people that just, I don't know what they did, but I mean, it works, right? But it will be really, really hard to keep it improving, you know, if you hire someone else. So
Yeah, and not to get too technical here, but like if you see some of their work and their examples and stuff, take a quick look at their code and you might see comments. If you see comments, that's a good sign, right? So in code, you'll see like, it's usually just like a little sections that above each little snippet that they'll comment and write in plain English, like, hey, this is what this part of the code does. And here's what you should focus on if you need to make an adjustment, or here's the last thing I changed, right? Because then that'll show you, like you said, like the cleanliness of their work and how organized they are, right? Like, are they documenting their journey? Are they documenting what they're doing? Or are they just kind of, you know, putting something together that works and telling you, here you go, you know? So
until it doesn't, right?
Seen it a million
right,
times,
until it
man.
doesn't.
100%.
Awesome. Yeah, but before we jump into use cases, I would like to touch base on like a little bit more in why software engineer, just like some common benefits, overall for the real estate business, like what out of the box you can get some benefits by hiring someone, you know?
Yeah, I think for sure, like there's a few that come to mind, and I think right off the bat, it's really understanding like what it is you're trying to build, and how different your solution is going to be than compared to everybody else's, right? Because one of the common things I see in real estate, right, for anybody who's getting started is great that you're getting started, but the tools and the approaches are very similar, right? Like data sources, everyone's using batch or prop stream, right? And so if you're using the same data and the same approach as everybody else, you're almost going to inevitably get the same result as everybody else, right? So
yeah, you're fishing in the same pond.
exactly, you're fishing in the pond. It's a big pond and you're a little fish, right? So it's really like, kind of, how do you differentiate yourself? How do you, like, what approach are you taking that maybe, you might need to go fish in a smaller pond where, or change your approach, right? So it's like you might, with the software engineer, you can also develop something that's more customized and a little bit more, I would say, scalable, right? So in the long run, like you might have a more efficient system. It might take a little more time to set up and get to that point compared to somebody who just pulled a list and started calling, right? Like it might take a little bit longer to get started, but you might have a higher chance of success or hit rate, like you were saying, Mike, right? You might have a better, long run benefit to doing it.
And also you have an edge, right? So you are like confident that nobody else is putting that work. So yeah, you probably have a better quality, and you are aware that you're doing something that nobody else. I mean, probably more a couple other people are doing it, but not that many. Not the vast majority are doing that or putting that extra work to pull that specifically, or automate that specific process, or scale or do that many follow-ups per lead.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, there's numerous benefits, right? I mean, efficiency in the common workflow, right? I mean, the common one that Samir touched on in terms of pulling a list, right, from, list source or batch or any of these, right, is what do I do with it, right? So making sure that you have the data that you need, right, to me, that's current, and then what do you do with it, right? So the common process is I pull it, I download it somewhere, and then what? Right? It's an integrator has to figure out, well, how does this map to my SMS solution, right? Whether it's whatever, REI reply, launch control, all these SMS text type systems, right? There's some work required in trying to navigate that, and then the whole skip tracing process as well, right? So hiring someone to give you to give you or either help offload that work, or automate it so it's so you can focus on the things that are important, which is locking up deals and closing them.
Definitely.
Is the other benefit.
Yeah. And then they can be consistent, right? Because when you write a piece of code, is most likely that it will be consistent. Like there is way less errors, and if there is one, it will let you know, like this was the error, and just modify the code to be able to handle that. But yeah, that's a huge thing, like that your data is being processed consistently, your skip tracing is being processed in the same way. So when you like stack the list and all of that to find multiple pain points, they will be there, because you manage all the data by yourself, right? Rather than pulling lists from different places and trying to make a Frankenstein, you have a clean and organized workflow.
Yeah, and it shows, right? Like it shows in your business practices. It shows to sellers, right, that you're actually organized and you're following up when you said you were going to follow up. Not like a few days later when all of a sudden it was convenient enough to follow up, right? It was it was like your system is working for you rather than you working yourself, right? And so like in order for anybody to achieve scalability or do more than one deal, right, you kind of need the system to do work for you and follow up, because computers will do what you tell them to do, right? So computers don't lie and they don't get tired, right? So it's one of those where you start being able to leverage a system rather than just leveraging only yourself and your time and energy, right? So that's where an integrator becomes more helpful in that way to get you to that point. And then a software engineer will separate you from the pack, right? Yeah. That will get you to the next level in terms of customized solutions and really getting to a point where what you're doing is different than everybody else.
Yeah. I have a question for you guys. Like, is an integrator different than a software engineer? Like, can you just hire someone to be your integrator and just ask him to code? Like, would you need to have both? Can you just have one? What do you guys think? Because they are different, of course, but like which path would you take if you were to, like, would you get an integrator and also a software developer, or maybe just an integrator, or maybe just a software developer for your business?
Yeah, I can take a stab at this one. Like from my personal opinion, I think that there's one fits into the other and not the other way around, right? I think that a software engineer fits into integrator. I don't think it's necessarily the other way around. And in my opinion, I think it's all about your vision as a company owner, right? Where it is you want to go, right? If you feel that you want to take a certain approach that's simplistic, that follows common tools for let's just say for cost purposes or whatnot, and you want to scale at your own pace, right? Then maybe an integrator is the prime use case for you until you get to the point where you need customized solutions, right? But for those that want to reach the stars and want to expand exponentially, right, and grow as fast as they possibly can, then like to Samir's point earlier, you want to make that investment early, right? Where the scalability part, where you get to the point where the system that you're building first starts off with minimum viable product, but you can offload work to it in a consistent manner where you just manage key performance indicators and then make the changes as you go, right? And then you just scale the system as you go, where you're pivoting your attention to making sure that you're capturing leads and closing them. That's my opinion on the difference between the two.
Yeah,
100%. And you don't need to go on and hiring a dev, right? That might be a bigger undertaking than in the beginning than you might be comfortable with. But you might be able to bring on a dev as a consultant in the beginning, right? Like they might not be doing any coding or development work for you, but they're at least giving you consulting and recommendations on how you should be thinking about your business for the long run, right? And when you are ready, you can hire the developer for your needs, right? So that might be a good way to kind of start that thinking or start that approach without necessarily maybe committing or taking an active stance in hiring, right?
Right.
So
excellent point.
Yeah, it's not like you have to move to it now. And then second thing, I think of it as more like for anybody that's hired a specialist before, like you understand, like there's a general person and then there's specialties, right? So it's like I think of integrator as an umbrella, and Mike, like you said, right? And software engineer falls within kind of that umbrella a little bit. But integrator, I would say, is probably more general view of systems and kind of back end. And then when you hire a software developer, that's like you're hiring a specialist, right? Who's going to come in and understand and develop customized solutions, right? So it's very similar to like a GC versus a specialist, right? A specialist is going to have a deeper understanding of the topic and be able to do things that a GC might not be able to do, right? They might know of it, but they don't know how to do it,
Yeah. Love it. Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's jump into some use cases, and then we can just get any questions that people might have. And I have three use cases in mind. Well, we can just go one by one. What about data? What can you do with custom code related to data that could give you an edge besides everybody else?
Yeah, I think I can, being a data architect, I might be able to tackle this one.
You can go first this time.
Yeah. So I think data is there's a saying, right? Like data is king right now in today's industry and in the world we live in. Data is king, right? Data is the new oil, right? That's what the saying is.
Right.
So it's that there's a reason for that. And there's a reason why companies pay millions of dollars for data. Companies like Amazon, Facebook, Google, their whole businesses thrive on data, right? So there's a reason for it. And in real estate, I don't think it's any different, right? So especially with like lists and things that you're pulling, from common data providers, you're looking, and it's very important to have a timeline to your data and your leads, right? So if your speed to lead, it becomes very important. And in situations where there's high motivation, like pre-foreclosure or short sales or things like that, where it's very time sensitive, staleness of data can become a huge factor that you might not even realize is an issue, right? And so understanding where the data comes from is important, right? So if you back into like how do PropStream, how do Batch, all these data providers, list stores, how do they get their data, right? And a lot of them are they're pulling from county records, right? So like where do county records get their data from, right? And that's, you got to understand, kind of backing into it, like where does the actual data come from, right? And so understanding that, and then how do you get that data faster, right? How do you get that data before everybody else sees it on PropStream or Batch, right? Because by the time that's on those platforms, it's already weeks or months delayed, right?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at pre-foreclosure, which started a month ago compared to a month later where you're seeing the data, you're now fishing in a bigger pond, right?
Right.
Versus if you see that immediately and you know what's happening in the market, you can now act on that data much more quickly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing. And then with lists as well, right? People pull like 10,000 lists or lead lists and things like that, and they just start blasting them, right? But that's a shotgun approach, right?
Right.
So that's great, but your costs are also kind of going with you, right? So a lot of people get into business and realize, oh my gosh, it's so expensive to actually run all these platforms, batch leads, batch dialer, batch SMS, whatever, right? Like you're now spending a ton of money to shotgun and blast out. Whereas like if you have more data that's narrowed down and niche in that way, which a software developer can help with that, right? And then your focus are maybe a little bit more limited or focused in that approach. It might be more things and touch points you're hitting them with, right? Like maybe you're also doing PPC in there, which is pay per click, or SMS, cold call, direct mail, but your lists are also more focused, right? And now you get these lists and things before anybody else has had an opportunity to work on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It would be
So
crazy to have like 4, 5, 6 touch points before everybody else does. Like that will probably increase your conversion rate. But yeah, yeah, you were about to say something, Mike.
no, I wanted to add to it. Yeah, I mean, efficiency of lists is definitely it. First to market. But the general point here is that the list that you're working with is, it's not stale. And to your point, Armando, like convert, there's a possibility of conversion, right, increasing because the data that you're working with is current, right? and
Yeah.
and that's the whole, in the world we live in today, right? Not just data is king, current data is king, so that you know who it is that you're marketing to, right? That's to get a lead, you got to know who your audience is, and I think that this puts you in a prime position, versus the shotgun approach that Samir mentioned. uh, the more times that you could do this on a consistent basis, the better chances of your results are,
Yeah.
in terms of conversion.
yeah, and I would
Definitely.
say, if you're now have freed up more time to then be on the calls with those maybe more motivated sellers, and you can harness some of your skills like negotiation skills, sales skills, that you're not now spending a bunch of time in the integrator work, right?
Right.
That you've now kind of freed yourself up to do and actually focus on the business or do what you're better at, right? Rather than having to do all the data pulling and loading and all these things that you normally would just spend most of your time doing.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a question from Corey. He asks, where is the data coming from? Do you guys have any thoughts about this? Like, where is these big platforms getting the data from?
Yeah, so I can take a stab at that. So generally speaking, right, I would say third tier or public platforms like, like Batch and PropStream and all these list providers, right? They subscribe to major data warehouses, like mostly in the US, and there's not
Yeah.
very many of them. They range in terms of size, but there's less than a 3-digit amount of them in the US that pretty much contain, or aggregate. They're aggregators, is what the technical term is. Their data comes from 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 sources, of exposable public data that's consumable, right? So there's protection laws that say you can't expose certain data, like phone numbers and all these other things. But in aggregation, you can purchase, they purchase this data from these aggregators. And so what you're getting, right, to Samir's point, in these list providers is data that has made 3 or 4 hops, and through those hops, is old in data terms.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, so that's one path. That's where they get the data from. And for the individuals, you can go to the county and you can just request it. Some of them will give them for free. Some of them will sell you a subscription for a couple. I don't know, like $50, 100, 200. Doesn't, it will depend on the county, but Yeah, but then you'll have to do all the data cleaning and the skip tracing and everything. But that's where software developers come in. So where they can just build a workflow to automate this whole process and give you the same list that you will be downloading from PropStream or Batch Leads or any lead source, like the same format, everything clean, but probably 3 weeks prior than everybody else. So that's a main difference between getting those data sources. Awesome. Yeah, so another use case that I would love to touch would be marketing. Um, what benefits do you guys see for the marketing side of by using a software developer?
Yeah, I think marketing, I kind of touched on it a little bit there with like the shotgun approach and how
Yeah,
everybody else does it, right?
uh-huh.
But the marketing is really it's one of the core pieces of any business, right? For that matter. So especially real estate. But it's also marketing can be rather expensive, and especially when you're starting out to really do correctly and at any kind of massive scale, right? So it's understanding, I think, that starts with the data and then it leads to the marketing, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
understanding like how can you do marketing more efficiently and in the most targeted way, right? So software developers, I think, have an understanding of how systems work. We, a lot of us understand how Facebook and Google tend to do things, at a high level at least, and maybe a little bit more granular than most. So things like targeted advertising become much more commonplace, right? Where you can now take a lead that's maybe you're just targeting via SMS or cold call, right? But that's just one touch point, right? So it's like if you can now have a targeted marketing approach where you're, have things to on Facebook or Google or wherever, where now they're starting to see you and your business more often, right? That builds rapport, that builds trust, right? And so I think that's one approach. But again, it's like you don't have to do that work each time. Cold calling and it's like you're on the phone doing it or you're hiring a VA to do it. But with PPC, your work's being done for you, right? It's the systems are in Facebook and Google and things are doing that work in the back end, right?
yeah.
So it's leveraging that ability and time that you frees you up to do other things. I think that's a big piece of it, at least for marketing.
Yeah, I think you touched on it, Samir. I'll add to that, right? It gives you multiple platforms to expose, or gain insight into the people that you're marketing to, right? You write code once, and whether it's PPC, or some other mechanism, right? You're making sure that you lay out that touch point so that you're seen out there, where you're looking to acquire leads in an efficient manner. And then
Yeah,
it's collective, right? The other benefit here, I think the underlying benefit here is that as a business owner or a visionary, you get to see the collective process of where you want to invest and which touch points you value in your business, right? Samir touched on cold calling and all that, but what do you do when stuff comes in? How do you process it, right? How does it work in your CRM, and who it is who is it that you follow up with? So all this the systematic things that go through it, a software engineer can help you on the marketing side by presenting the options, right, in terms of cost, and then making the process efficient so you can spend time, um, you know, in the acquisition phase and closing deals.
I love it. Yeah, yeah. Like, how can you automate the outreach or the initial like contact, and then just focus on replying to the people that make like reach out to you, right? So you can make a workflow where you send a text and also send them like ads in Instagram, and then send ads in Facebook in different campaign, and then send a piece of direct mail, and then text again. Like all of that will be automated based on how many days after, and then stop all marketing if they sell a property, if they sell that property to someone else. That's crazy. So you stop wasting any money with them, or stop all marketing if they change the status in your CRM, like if they are talking with some of your reps, or stop all marketing if they went through the auction date and something else happened. So yeah, you can streamline all of that process, and then your team can just focus on picking up the phone and replying to those texts, and yeah, so it gets pretty, it offloads a lot of work, admin work for you, you know.
And as somebody who's like kind of gone through this rabbit hole of trying out different CRMs and things like that,
Same here.
yep. It's one of those things that looking in hindsight, I'm like, every CRM does its own things well, but doesn't do other things that you might want, right? Whereas some other system might do those things, but then doesn't do other things, right? So it's like finding a perfect CRM doesn't exist, is my point, right? But
Not yet.
not yet, but it exists for you that you would want to build, right? So maybe what you want to build is your perfect CRM, but don't know how to do it, right? And I think that's where a software engineer can really help, right? And understanding like, hey, this is what I would want in a system, and can you help me build that, right? Now that becomes powerful because your own system is something that's going to be unique to you and how you like to do business, right? That's going to be powerful where you can maybe integrate PPC in those and cold calling and SMS. And like Armando, you said, things to like stop those campaigns automatically if it detects that the property's been sold, right? Not you stopped it, not manual intervention. I'm talking about like it automatically sees that the property has been sold and it cuts off marketing. So now you're no longer spending more, right? So like this is the power of software. This is the power of hiring a software engineer to help with these kind of tasks, right? It's not about things falling through the cracks. It's your system is taking care of these things, right?
Yeah, love it. And all of this translates to higher like conversion rate and lower costs, you know, like the cost is a huge thing. I don't know if you want to touch base, like you can just wrap everything we have said into like this will save you money. I mean, of course you'll have to invest some money at the beginning to get the systems in place and everything, but in the long run it will be like crazy different, right? Like pulling the list from the right source, and also making the right marketing efforts, stopping the marketing efforts when the time's right, and yeah, so you can focus your data in the right place, so you spend less money in data, but also time from your VAs, right? And also like money from your text campaigns, and also money from your direct mail campaigns and your PPC campaigns. So yeah, like being focused and being organized really pays off, right?
100%. In the long run, yes. Scalable
Yeah.
solutions, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Love it. Awesome. Do you guys want to touch base in any other like topic related to software engineers?
I would say clarity is a really big thing. I know we touched upon it earlier, but I really want to stress that because like it's one of those where it can lead to disappointment on both sides. That's why it's so important, right? To focus on that and like understanding what you do as a business, right? Like you might, if you're confused as a business owner, guess what? Your software engineer who you hire is going to be just as confused, right? So if you don't know whether you want to wholesale, fix and flip, buy and hold real estate, multifamily, single family, this, that, or the other, get clear first, right? And be like, hey, this is what we do, and this is our focus. It might change later, but right now, this is what we're doing, right? So at least you can communicate that to somebody like, hey, this is what our business does, right? And this is what I need from you, right? Because if you can't have those two sentences, you're not going to have a good time doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, or other parts of your business either, for that matter, because nobody's going to know what the heck you're looking for, right?
So, yeah, 100%. I think you need to paint the picture, right, of where it is you want to go. I think I mentioned that a couple of times, during this live. Figuring out what your vision is, what your strategy is for your business, where you want to go, and like you said, you can always pivot, right? I mean, that's natural in any business, but knowing is where you want to go, and provide sort of the guidelines of how you start building. And you do have to communicate like what that vision is and what your intent is, right? So you can get the right focus with regard to engineering and the right tooling in place, essentially to make sure that you're on the right, you're taking the right steps on that journey.
Yeah. And
also, please never automate something that doesn't work yet, so if it's not working by you doing it manually, it will not work if you automate. It will be just like more expensive. So yeah, like if you want to try something like a different approach, different angle, different list or whatever, just do it a couple of times manually. It will be way easier to automate if you can explain the process, like the whole, like the from A to Z, like in the same workflow. And you can also tell them like, hey, once we have this ready, we have these results by doing this manually. Just like it will grow exponentially if we can automate it and scale it to different cities or different counties or whatever. But don't invest money if you don't have something or I mean, if you have the expertise, go for it. If you have been in real estate for some time and you know what will work, that's awesome. But if you're still new, just do some try and error manually and then just automate that process.
100%. And for anybody like that doesn't hire a project manager and is hiring a software engineer by themselves, I would say one thing is like just setting expectations and telling them that what you expect. Because if for example, like if you want them to check in with you and tell you like, hey, this is what I've done this week, or this is our progress, a lot of engineers probably don't want to do that because they don't like to talk to people. So be like, hey, I need a project update every week, and I want you to tell me in plain English, 5 bullet points of what you've done and what you're planning to do. Right? It's just like managing any employee, because and not in like technical speak. Like you want it to be like in understanding the terms that you might understand, right? Like you might not know some jargon that they're using, but like you would want that to be communicated to you, right, in a form that you can understand. If you were to do it yourself, right, or hire a software developer, don't let them in terms dictate what they tell you, right? Like at the end of the day, you're hiring them to do a task, so make sure that they're doing that task and you understand what they're doing, right?
Yeah, and a key role of the product manager, either if you're yourself or if you hire someone, this is the guy who manages the team, the software developers and the designers and everything. Like it's really important for them or you to prioritize the things, so you stay laser focused in this MVP. If not, you will be implementing like huge features, like something that Samir said earlier. Like you will be trying to implement huge features, but since you have some other things to go, is the system is not running yet, so you're not making money, and that's a recipe for disappointment, because at the end of the day, if you're not testing the system, it will like it could fail, and that's something that I think we should talk about. Like not all the efforts make a return on investment. Your job is to find a way to reduce that risk, but yeah, a lot of projects doesn't like make the return that they promise. A lot of AI projects, for example, doesn't make money back, well, more than what you put into the system, right? But yeah, like also Corey was asking like what questions should you be asking them to just to make sure that everything's running fine. Like do you have any key points?
Yeah, I think asking them like, so when you set up like what your expectations are, what your vision is, goals, I was kind of set up maybe even like minor milestones to hit along the way, right? Like how close are we to MVP, and then what is needed to be done to get there, right? Like what obstacles are you facing right now? Those kind of things to kind of track progress, right? I think that's more so what it is than from like a technical standpoint. The technical standpoint is kind of their job to figure out, right? But if it's not communicated clearly, what is the goals and where you are in challenges, then that's kind of where I would start, right? Is like understanding where you are in that process. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. From my perspective, it's making sure that the vision that you have in terms of your overall goal is stated clearly and drawn out. And then the other part I think that a lot of people miss is what's the pain, right? What is it that you're trying to resolve, right? By hiring a person to do work, right? There has to be a business problem that you're trying to solve. As someone hiring an engineer to do work. So those are the two things that I would focus on. And then to Samir's point, right, making sure that there's there's incremental check-ins to make sure that you're marching towards that goal.
Definitely. Oh, Damien said something pretty important. Just when you hire someone, make sure that you get the code at the end of the day. If not, you'll be dependent but to them. If you want to make
Absolutely.
any changes or whatever, you'll have to hire them again, just pay by the hour. And if that relationship goes south by any reason, you will have to start all over again. And also there is some errors, you can lose the code or whatever, so it's really important you having I actually I texted Samir a couple of days ago because I lost a piece of code because some error in the platform and whatever that happens, and it was my mistake that I wasn't I was just testing that, and I wasn't ready to save that, and yeah, I lost it. So it's really important that you keep track of all the progress of code in GitHub or any tool that you want to use. And so yeah, you are the owner of the code, and when you hire someone, just get them in paper, right? That you are the owner. They cannot replicate the code to someone else. What else?
Make sure that you're an admin.
Yeah.
Make sure
Right.
make sure that you're not like a user and they're granting you access. No, you're the admin. You're granting them access.
Yeah. Definitely. But yeah, you just overall things just to make sure that it will work fine. Once the system is ready and everything, you will be able to actually work with the system. Yeah. Awesome. Do you guys have any other questions from the chat, or do you guys want to share something? Any other tip? I have a question for you. So I love the analogy, Samir, that you said, you can hire a contractor, like a super high end or maybe a lower end contractor. The prices will be different and everything, and it's really similar to software developers, right? You can have a super high end developer or someone who barely can just make the code. But where do you find them? If you were to hire someone from a really high quality or a probably cheaper quality, where are some places where you can find someone, and how can you interview, or how can you know, besides their portfolio, how can you know if someone will be able to get the job done?
Sure. Yeah. So I think of it I've heard this concept called the contractor triangle, right? And so the contractor triangle basically states that you can have 2 out of 3 options, and the 3 options are speed, price, and quality. Yep. I pick 2 out of 3, and lately it's been pick 1.5 out of 3. Right? So I think the same thing goes, right? It's what do you value more? What's your priority? Is it quality? And you might not get the price then, right? So it's understanding what you want out of the 3. So with that, right, I think hiring wise, it's going to be dependent on what's most important to you, right? And when you talk to people, however you find software developers, maybe that's through Fiverr or Upwork, or you might go and talk to a recruiter, telling them hey, I'm looking for a software developer. Can you help me out? And recruiters have their own compensation structure, so just being aware of that. But really, it's understanding that. And then I personally like to focus on what is their critical thinking in real life scenarios, right? So I think it's great that you can code and everything like that, but can we talk through a problem? Not necessarily can you code this solution in front of me? Sure, that's great. You might be the best coder, but can we talk through problems together, right? And can you critically think about scenarios that we can talk about now, right? Not presentable or already rehearsed scenarios, right? So so it's one of those things, right? And I'm not looking for the best answer. I'm not looking for the most optimized answer. I'm looking for, can we have a conversation about problem solving, right? That's for me really big in any potential hire or team member or partner, right? So that's kind of how I approach it. And of course they need to code, and they need to get questions correct, or at least in the same ballpark. But for me, it's not just about the code.
Well, yeah. Do you want to add anything to that, Mike?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, when you're looking at, I think it depends on your level of quality and your level of scale, really, right? Fiverr and Upwork and all this stuff, like different levels. Also looking if you want to source yourself here in the US, or I think it's globally now, right? LinkedIn's a good source, right? Almost every engineer has worked for either corporation or for themselves. You can search for skills and do those things like on platforms like that. In terms of hiring, right? Definitely problem solving, right? I think that's the key in anything, and that's an engineer's job to do. Um, Providing options, right, to a business owner is the other part, right? Coding to me, even now, right, with larger outfits going from a startup, in my experience, going from a startup to corporate, is a lot of the coding itself, that's even outsourced as well, right? So the value in it though is translating a requirement from a business owner, and providing options of how you solve the problem. So earlier I said have a strategy, right? Know where it is you're going for right now. You could always change it, but always be able to define the pain that you're having. What is it that you're trying to solve? And what's the value to you? You answer those three questions and you bring it to someone that can speak or translate requirements, like Samir was saying, right? Uh, provide options and talk to a problem critically, then you're getting somewhere.
One thing I just want to add real quick is understanding their availability, right? Like, do they even have time to do this for you, right? Because if they work a demanding job or something like that, where they need to be on the clock, do they have time in their schedule to deliver for you, right? Because if they can't, and it's all great, but then down the road you might just face, like low performance or just issues in that itself, right? Because they don't have the time. So
Right.
And also, if it's a freelancer, right? Like, how many projects are they have at the moment? Like, if they are doing 5 projects for 5 different industries at the same moment, that's kind of hard for them. I mean, probably they will fail to some projects, but hopefully that's not yours, right? So just be aware of the workload of the people you're trying to hire.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
definitely. And let me ask something related to what you were saying, Mike. Like, if you were to find value to hire someone from the US and just outsource the development thing.
I mean, I would think so. It's like, as that person would probably be more as like a project manager to me, right?
Yeah.
Who's kind of maybe managing the whoever's writing the code, right? So as long as we're on the same page, I see value in that, right? Especially if you don't have experience talking to software developers, or you may not even want to do that. You know what I mean? So it's like, sure, I think that's a great way to go about it. But of course, you have to vet that person as well, and make sure that you guys are clear in your goals and what your expectations are.
Awesome. And also there is another question, like, if you would you pay for a long-term maintenance? Because when you hire a freelancer or whatever, they will probably offer you, like, after I finish the project, like, any other change will cost you whatever money, or you can hire me on a plan where I can just give it maintenance to the system. What are you guys thinking about that?
Yeah, so I could jump in on that one. So I think there was a previous question to the long-term maintenance. I do agree, right? I mean, along with keeping the code and maintaining it, I think it's about vision, right? You want to make sure that you're continually evolving, and it doesn't mean that you have to dump, all the money into the software part. You have to make a business as a decision owner what the maintenance looks like, and what you split it into different buckets. The maintenance part, if you're satisfied with the amount of automation or amount of code that's being produced, then great. But then there's the other side of new product development, right? Where it's, I want to develop something different because I see an opportunity in the market, right? An architect will help you get there. I wouldn't say architect in a general sense. Um, Director of engineering, or whatever you want to call them. I do think, Damien, that there is value in it, as long as it clear communication on timing, on price, of everything that you need, essentially, to manage your project and make sure that you get to where you need to be. Right. The problem with offshoring traditionally is quality. Right. Make sure you find a good outfit that works for you, and speed. Right. The reason why that's happening is the cost efficiency, but also scalability in terms of getting work done to you on time.
Yeah, 100%. And just to add on, it also goes to like need and budget, right? So like in the beginning, you might not have the budget to maybe have somebody on a long-term contract, right? Maybe you just have enough to, like you said, if you start with $500, you might just have enough to kind of get you to this one task, right, and get started. But then long term, it's also need. It's like how quickly are you, or how often are you kind of engaging and needing changes to be made? I think of it almost like an attorney, right? So an attorney you might have on retainer, or some attorneys are just flat fee, right, per transaction or per use. So it's like if you need that attorney like every other day, maybe having them on retainer makes more sense, right? But if you just need them once a year or here and there, maybe just the flat fee might be better, right? So in the beginning, it's like maybe you start off that way, and then over time realize like how much of a need you have, or how much modifications are actually being made, right?
Yeah. Or you can also just hire someone to be fixing bugs all across your systems, just to be a firefighter. But that will be on different scale, right? Where you have enough systems and enough problems where you can have someone just going after them.
Definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, do you guys want to add something else before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I would say, understanding.
Follow Samir on Instagram, please.
Follow, like, and subscribe to Armando's channel. Yeah, I would say, just think of it as an investment, right?
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cost, but it's really for long-term scalability and growth, more than just like a quick one transaction kind of thing, right? I think too many people get into business thinking, I just want to close deals and get through my first deal, but really you're building a business around closing deals, right? And so like how do you close more deals more efficiently and scale that, right?
Yeah. Love it. Do you want to also add something, Mike, before we take off?
Yeah, encourage people to reach out, right? I mean, I think the three of us are in sub 2, so we're reachable. They put their @ symbols at Mike.Mafnas on IG. Feel free to ping us with questions, right? I mean, I think it's worth the conversation if you're thinking about starting out, first of all, right? Like, what tools you're using and what heartaches you've had evaluating, like Samir and I had mentioned earlier. And maybe it translates later on to investing. I call it investing in your business, right? Making sure that you're primed to scale, right? I think there are people here to help. And honestly, in my short time here in sub 2, finding people that have the skill, software engineering skill, to be able to advise, it's taken a long time, right? So for those of you who have joined, thank you for joining. I mean, I think we're excited to meet you all and to see how we can provide value to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, Armando. Samir, we'll talk to you soon.
Definitely, guys.
All right.